We should be recording now. So, hello everyone, and Happy New Year. This is COSE Interim meeting. This is an official IETF meeting. As such, the note well applies. So if you haven't read it already, please read it carefully. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask me or Matthew for clarifications. This is our agenda for today. We'll first have administrative part, then some updates for drafts and charter, and some CBOR and the discussion of CBOR certificates draft. Is there any bashing of this agenda? I will take this as a no. Okay, so note well was presented. The minutes will be taken at this link. I also pasted it in the Jabber. I can also paste it in the chat just to make sure that people have it. Presence will be taken in the minutes and the meeting is recorded. Yes. Are there any volunteers to help with the minutes or Jabber? Well, if you have the chance, please join the minutes and help us at least have the correct action items in the minutes. Otherwise, we will be looking at that as well. So moving on to our document status, we have the cache aux 8152 bis aux already in RFCQ with missing reference. That is the same as it was during the previous meeting. For the 8152 bis struct, I believe Matthew has made maybe all of the changes, or at least most of them, and I believe they are discussing with Ben if there is anything else that needs to be changed. I imagine we'll have a new version quite soon, and hopefully we'll progress with that document very soon. And then for the next one, we are scheduled for the X509. We are scheduled for the telechat tomorrow. I don't know if there is any new thing for me to say here about that. I believe all the members of the IESG have no objections now for the draft. So yes, that's maybe the most important part here. The only thing that maybe we should briefly discuss is there are examples already provided by Jonathan. Maybe it will be good to reference those in the draft. I imagine this should be an editorial change, given that examples are not normative text, they are informative, and Yes, I imagine this should be like editorial change. If anyone has objections to that, please speak up.
This is Lawrence Lundblade. A little confused on COSE X509. There's still open issues in GitHub, and I don't know what telechat tomorrow we're talking about yet.
Yes, so the open issues in GitHub. So my understanding is that we need to improve the wording and provide a little bit of explanations why, for example, the X5U parameter needs to be in a trust relationship. Do you think that those issues are like would require more than editorial changes?
Maybe.
Okay.
So this is Ben Kaduk. Lawrence, thank you for mentioning the GitHub issues. I will be sure to look those over before I update my ballot position for the IESG telechat tomorrow. It's sort of our bi-weekly call where well, it's not the only place where we officially approve documents, but it's sort of the periodic sync up point that gives us a time when we're expected to look at the set of documents that are being reviewed that week.
Oh yeah, I see. Okay, IESG. I see. I missed that part. Yeah. Okay, understood.
No worries. But yeah, so this is actually the second time that COSE X509 has been on the agenda for the ISG. So most of us have looked at it quite extensively already, and it should be fairly straightforward, but I will definitely check the GitHub issues.
Yeah, I mean, I basically think COSE is basically X509 is trying to solve the same problem that JWS is trying to solve. So the big question is, why is any of this different from JWS? And if you either believe it's the same problem, or you either believe it's not the same problem, or there is, in which case maybe it should be the same. And if it's not the same, either you should make it the same or file errata against JWS.
You have no counter argument to that reasoning.
Counter argument. This is Michael. The counter argument is that JWS is something that we aspire to move to, but requires an ecosystem revolution. And the compressed X509, in theory, can be done with in a more of a fax effect kind of thing, incrementally.
This is not about compressed X509. This is about the headers in COSE.
Oh, I'm sorry. My bad.
Yeah, I know. I get mixed up too.
Yeah. I think that so I think it's clarifying something that JWS. Maybe you're right. Maybe it should really be erratas. Maybe it should update JWS.
I mean, we did add X5 bag, which JWS doesn't have, so that is one variant, variation. But I'm not even sure if I think X5 bag is all that important. But anyways, you got the idea. So thanks.
Yeah, my take on this would be that JWS was around when this work was done. So we actually had a chance to learn from that. And yeah, Jim actually tried to learn from that. And that's why COSE X509 is different in some details. So maybe it's a good idea to document these learnings a little bit better, so it's easier to understand why X509, COSE X509 is different from what JWS has.
Carsten, do you think that such documentation would need to live in this document specifically, or could it be a sort of separate follow-up document?
Well, I think that document would be most worthwhile if it actually had first experience from using COSE X509 as well. So I actually think it would be good to have that as a separate document, but that of course makes understanding the document at the moment and why it's a little bit different from the JWS one is harder than it could be.
Sorry, I'm trying to take notes at the same time, but I basically agree. I don't have any further comment.
Okay. So, okay, then I will wait for also Ben to see the issues in GitHub, and yeah, basically depending on that, see if I just need to improve a little bit the explanations, like having some editorial changes, or it's really more important to have some substantial changes here. Okay, that sounds as a good way forward. Thank you. And yes, the last item is the countersign document. There was the working group last call. I didn't see any objections to that, and I believe during the last meeting there was some support for it being ready from the working group's point of view. So unless there are any objections now, I think we can say that when the working group approves this.
Hi, this is Jonathan Hamill. So I raised an issue on the list about the status of the early code point allocation.
Yes. Yes. So we were supposed to look at that with Matthew. We still haven't done that, but we should be doing it very soon, I hope. And my understanding is that this is an issue just in terms of the examples, and as such, the worst case is that we will need to fix the examples, or do you see any other problems that could arise?
No, that's correct.
Okay. Okay, so I think those were the documents that we needed to discuss now. And then for the rechartering, I don't know if you have already seen, but Matthew has sent an email for the new charter asking everyone to review it and provide feedback. I think we have discussed it quite a few times, but if there are any points that you would like to discuss now, please speak. I'll take that as a no. Okay, and then we can move on to CBOR certificates. And John.
Thank you. So this will be two presentations. I will discuss the changes and planned updates for the next version, and then Göran will discuss issues. So next slide. And we submitted the version 06 yesterday. Yeah, next. So changes from 05 to 06, a lot of these are actually things that were presented at the last interim as planned updates, and then we have done that. So we have mentioned more certificate profiles. We have added text in the discussion that certificate change sizes is also a problem in non-IoT, for example, EAP, where access point cut the connection, and in quick, where large certificate chain lead to an extra round trips. Then we have implemented tools to download certificates from TLS servers and CBOR compress this. We have done that for tens of TLS servers. It works fine. Based on that, we see that there are some strange extensions, and there are definitely quite a lot of attributes. So we have introduced the possibility to encode attributes as a OID and a raw dir string to be able to compress everything out there. Then also noted that basically all certificates on the web have a single attribute per relative distinguished name. I have not seen any certificate on the web that is not formatted like that, and we have then optimized based on that. I don't know if there's any certificates in other areas where that actually have several attributes per RDM, but the standard definitely allows that. Then we saw some street address and postal code in some web certificates. This is also included in the CAB baseline, so they have been added to the IANA table. We have changed and simplified the algorithm registry, so it now includes, it's an int for the whole algorithm identifier, including parameters, instead of only being an int associated with the OID. Then we noticed that the signature value encoding for ECDSA did not work. There was a mathematical formula previously, but we noticed that that actually implied that you knew the issuer public key, which you typically don't if you process a single certificate. But we found out that could actually simplify this and make it better. So now the rule is instead of padding to a fixed length, you just pad to, so both the integers have the same length, which is actually simpler. Then we changed from zlib to brotli for the comparison table. Brotli provides a little bit better and faster compression. We wanted to compare with the best. We have significantly restructured the IANA table to make them easier to understand and better. So now they have the full OID and the dir encode of what they encode and so on. And better, also some more information, better structure and more information. Then there was a request to use the example certificates for ad hoc, and that required a subject private key. That's now added. The ASNN one was hopelessly outdated. We have removed that. We think it's probably too much work to keep that updated, but if somebody wants, please comment. And then some editorial changes like positive to unsigned that Carsten pointed out. Any comments? Otherwise, next slide. Next. So these are the current plans for 07. We want to have an example IEEE certificate, which Michael has promised to provide in January. Then there was a request for some more deployment guidance for IoT. Basically, some guidance on what different choices lead to, which sizes and so on. Then we are planning to use the tool we have to download a lot of TLS certificates or certificate change and try to compress them to see that the algorithm work. Most known collection of URLs, the most popular is Alexa, but that Alexa Million, I guess it's called, but that's now it's not free anymore. You have to pay to get that. But we found out that there are at least 3 publicly available lists: Cisco, Alexa Million, and then Tanko list, which is Tranco, maybe, which is a collection of these 2 and Alexa by some researchers. Then there are some specification left for the extensions. For some of the extensions, we definitely support like the full extension. For some other, we might support a subset based on how complex the extension is and what we see is actually used on the web. At least that's the plan. And that is planned to be done in 07. Then we plan to do comparison with Brotli for TLS chains. So we plan to take some example chains, for example, from tools.ietf, and then compare the DER chain, the CBOR chain, DER plus Brotli, and CBOR plus Brotli. And yeah, that we also hope to have maybe in 07 or yeah. Any comments? Other next? Then while starting to looking at chains, we see that there is of course quite a lot of duplicated data when you start with chains. Mainly the issuer field is duplication of a subject field in typically the next certificate, or if it's a self-issued certificate, in the same certificate. And very similar with the key identifiers. The authority key identifier is just a duplicate of a subject key identifier in another certificate. And for self-issued certificates, which seem to be actually quite common that TLS servers send, then you might also have another authority cert issuer in the authority key identifier. So basically the subject field is duplicated 3 times in the same certificate. Just a note that this could definitely be compressed, and Karsten wrote right that CBOR packed might help with. That's probably a good idea. I have not thought about that. Yes.
So but you're talking about compression here across certificates.
Yes.
Right? And to my reading, we haven't done anything about that. And
we have not.
I would agree with you that CBOR pack might be the right answer to do that for that. But then I think we also need to ask the question, how long the chains, what are these chains? Where are they used? How long are they? And I quite there. And Carson just had a comment in the chat, which I agree with him. We could define a profile of it, but I don't know. We haven't really made a lot of progress on that lately, have we?
No, the problem really is that it's extremely hard to define a CBOR pact without having a good set of use cases in mind. And given that this is a use case that we actually reasonably understand and that we actually can get corpuses from, that we can run experiments on, it seems to me that the basic approach of CBOR pact to have a base document that defines mechanisms and then specific documents that define how to use these mechanisms in a specific environment, that would actually work very well. How does CBOR pact relate to the static context header compression? Well, actually, the static context header compression could go ahead and define entries in the tables that CBOR pact uses. So that's another way to develop CBOR pact, to integrate the table building or the static dictionary building with environments that can make use of that.
Carson, also there's the issue if we're primarily dealing with compression of chains of certificates, then I would actually want to say what happens if we just take some simple CBOR representation of the certificates without doing a lot of the optimization we're doing right now, and applied CBOR pact to it, right? It might actually be simpler than some of the things we're doing, but if in the degenerate case of one certificate, that gains us nothing.
Right. Well, actually, I'm not sure about that, but probably not much.
Well, CBOR pack will do nothing because it's most of the items occur only once. The commonalities across certificates.
Well, that depends a lot on whether your CA and your subject are actually from the same organization. So depending on how you use these certificates, it may give you a little bit.
There's also the possibility that CBOR pack might also be applicable to the wider thing, the whole COSE structure or something like that, that you may be carrying certificates in. Would do better.
Yeah, so we could define a static dictionary specifically for this. So that would be part of the profile.
Yeah, that sounds great. Let's look at that. On the next slide, I have some example sizes. I did not look, if you change to the next slide. So here I did not think about CBOR pack, but I just noted that these fields could just be replaced with an integer pointing to like 0 pointing to the subject field in this cert and the 1 pointing to the subject field in the next cert in the collection. And then you get quite substantial savings for the example certificate. You reduce from 1,242 to 1,075. I assume CBOR pack would do almost as much. You have some little bit more overhead then, but similar. As I said, the savings for self-issued certificates are even bigger. Benefits of doing something like this is that you provide large savings. Negative is that you provide extra, even both this and CBOR, extra complexity, and the compression of the, if you use it for compression, it becomes 2 pass. You need to pass over everything twice. And for the TL, when used in TLS, where you already have broadly compression, basically this would achieve basically similar things. I don't know how the numbers would look for that, but I assume Broadly would find these duplicated things and compress them relatively optimal. Yeah. And that's the end of my presentation. I don't know if some more comments based on that slide.
So just a question for the last slide, the figure that you provide, and there when using Broadly, or what are they exactly for? And
These are when you replace the issuer field with an integer. So in this place, 1,
okay.
Meaning, yeah, the idea here was that a 1 indicates that the issuer field is the same as the subject field in the next certificate, one step away. And the same here for the authority key identifier. It's the same as the subject key identifier in the next certificate.
I see. Thank you.
But then you have basically 2 levels of, you would need to uncompress it then to be able to verify the signature. Yeah.
So this is Lawrence Lundblade. I was question of if you have any comments about certificate size versus code size. I mean, it seems like there's a number of things that are being proposed here that reduce the certificate size, but that will increase code size. And I'm mostly asking just like if there's, been thinking about the use cases and, is code size an issue?
Yeah, I don't know. I tried to implement this. My code size did not increase very much, but I had to restructure the code, and I think it got more. I had to rewrite it to be able to implement this and do a 2-pass, and probably I used a lot more memory.
I mean, it was, but my question was in general. I mean,
Yeah.
the whole approach, right? Because I mean, there's a lot of these things are little tweaks here and there, and each one of them adds some code.
Yeah. I think we need to. I think that's something we should consider. I think the specification is not set in stone. It would be very good to hear feedback that this only gives 1 byte optimization, but it uses a lot of code. I think we should skip this. Yeah. But I think it also depends on what assumption you have. If your assumption is that you have CBOR pack, then maybe your code size is not increasing very much. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So do you have any ideas how we can try to evaluate the different assumptions and the different criteria that we should be trying to optimize?
I don't know. One step would be to, depends on what we do. I think you could get numbers for, we will look at change to the next version. So I can at least provide example change and example sizes and compare with what you get when you get Broadly compression and so on. Then me or someone else need to look at the CBOR pack. But it seems like there's interest, so we should look more into certificate change, seems to be the indication at least.
Okay. So if there are no other comments, we can go on to the next presentation.
This is Lawrence again. I wrote an email about the use of CWAR sequence. You know, that this is a CWAR sequence, that it's not a individual data item, and the implications that has for incorporation into other CWAR protocols. I didn't see any responses to that, but I thought it was something that probably should be thought through a little bit more.
Okay, I have missed that email.
I can resend it.
Lawrence, was this the discussion we had last meeting? Meeting. I mean, there were a number of pros and cons listed. I tried.
So there's two issues with byte string wrapping. One was what you hash, and we had some previous discussion about that. This is a separate issue. This is about whether the overall compressed certificate is a CWAR sequence like it is now, or it turns into a data item. You know, and if it stands as a CWAR sequence, you can't just drop a CWAR sequence into another CWAR protocol. You have to, because it doesn't work. It can confuse the decoders. So you have to wrap it in a byte string. So that's the second issue: is this, should this be a data item or should it remain a CWAR sequence? And the implications for putting it in another another CWAR protocol. So I think it's a separate issue from the byte string wrapping for hashing.
Okay.
Yeah, putting in another protocol, then you could also wrap it with array, I assume.
Yeah, you can wrap it. You either wrap it with an array or you wrap it in a byte string. And like with the COSE X509 headers, unlike X5 or C5, C5T, C5 chain, there is byte string wrapping there, so that all works. But anyway, we don't have to go into it now. I just wanted to see if anybody read the email, and I'll resend it.
Please post an issue.
Oh yeah, an issue. Okay, that's fine.
We come to the issues now, I think. So I'll show you where.
Okay, cool.
Thanks.
Okay, any other comments here? I'll take that as a no, and moving on to the next presentation.
Okay, Göran Selander, I'm going to talk about some of the issues. Next slide, please. So we are compiling the open issues in this public repo, if you haven't seen it. And that's mainly, in terms of the number of issues, it's mainly issues regarding things we think are necessary to do, or the comments that we track. But there are also, I mean, this is open for anyone to comment and add issues. So please use that, and hopefully we'll get adopted at some point, and then we'll move this to the COSE working group issue tracker. So today I'd like to speak about 5 of these issues, which are selected here. Next slide, please. Here's the first, and that's this is a request to specify CBOR encoding of certificate signing request. So this was this particular issue was posted by Stefan Ristisov, who may be on the call now. Yes, I see him here. So yes, great that you're here, Stefan. I'll ask you in a minute to motivate this, but just to say that we have got this request previously also, and there is already a first sketch for how to do this. But first, Stefan, would you like to just motivate why you think this is useful, and what's your use case?
So we worked on ad hoc implementation, and we wanted to use ad hoc with CBOR encoded certificates, and for that reason we need such certificates from somewhere. And I read the documentation, I read the draft, and I noticed that that's not specified. So I mean, certificate signing requests are not specified. And I think this is important in the IoT environment, especially for devices which may use ad hoc to generate certificate signing requests. And yeah, so that was the motivation for posting my issue.
Okay, thanks. So I mean, I agree with Stefan. I think this is a good motivation. This has been actually requested for people that are planning to use TLS as well. So it's I think the idea is that you would have sort of the same type of encoding of the different certificate related items. But anyway, there is a first sketch, and the question here in the issue is basically, is this something that we should try to align with, or even take over in COSE? So this first sketch is in a draft on enrollment using EST with OSCORE, and this is an appendix. And we note that this format is the first sketch, really, of what. So there are some examples here of things that we would like to have in a CSR, like subject public key algorithm, or encoding of attributes in specifying extension requests. And that's things that we already define for CBOR certificates. So it makes sense to align them. Yeah, so the question is this something that we think that we should work on in COSE, or should we just hope that ACE will adopt this and that they will travel somehow in parallel? We have the fortune that one of the authors of the CBOR certificate draft is actually the contributor of this particular example here. So we are free to take this example and move it out of that draft and put it into this draft or a separate COSE draft. Any opinions about this?
I think it's good to actually evolve these in parallel. So I think we should keep a very close eye on this, and probably the easiest way to keep a close eye on it would be to do it in the same document. If it turns out to be difficult to do that, we can always extract it into a separate document later.
Thanks, Karsten. Other opinions?
I'll just note we had at least one opinion in the chat. I don't know that we need to read them all out.
Right. Michael says, okay, same document. Thank you. Okay, unless there.
Okay, so would that affect the charter in this case?
Good point, Divido. Yeah, let's come back to the charter after we've gone through the issues. There are other issues as well coming up.
Okay.
Next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, so here's another related issue. So currently the CSR is specified in terms of signature keys, but we, for IoT applications, we'd like to be able to use static Diffie-Hellman keys to authenticate with. And then there's a request to specify the encoding of CSR for static DH keys. And one solution to that is provided by this RFC 6955, Diffie-Hellman proof of possession algorithms by Jim Schad and Hema Prapul Chandra, I think. And the basic idea is we replace the signature in the CSR with a MAC generated by with a MAC computer with a key, which is computed with the shared secret using the Diffie-Hellman keys of the requesting endpoint and the CA. And it's described in section 6 of this RFC. It's pretty straightforward. And there are advantages with using this. There will be the CSR will be smaller, which is, I mean, the MAC instead of the signature is a good reason why to use static Diffie-Hellman keys. But it also requires the requester to have access to the static Diffie-Hellman key of the CA. And then there are different variants of acquiring the CA Diffie-Hellman key. This could be part of the enrollment functionality. So, for example, in EST, you could use various of the EST functions to acquire trust anchors. So, well, same question here. Do you think that we should specify also this in the same draft, or should we? Does this motivate that we should actually put all the CSR related stuff in a separate draft? Any opinions?
I see in the chat there is one opinion that using MAC for CSR may also help for post-quantum algorithms.
Right. Yes. Good point. Okay, I don't hear any objection or any preference for doing this in a separate draft. So the working assumption here is that we try to do this. We make it in the same draft. Next slide, please.
Just a second, I have one question regarding this issue.
Yes, go ahead.
And namely, so this means that the CA also authenticates with static Diffie-Hellman key, right? Is it possible to have something like certificate which contains static Diffie-Hellman key, but it is signed with, I mean, by asymmetric algorithm?
Yes, that's possible. And
how can then the proof of possession be shown in that case?
Yeah, so in principle, I'm not just speaking in principle. I don't know exactly how to signal this or how to set it up. But the enrollment request requires one trust anchor to be able, in this case, to be able to generate the shared secret and the MAC and so on. But the certificate coming back, the enrolled certificate could be signed with another key, with the signature key of the CA. So there might be multiple trust anchors.
Okay, I understand. So basically, two trust anchors must be there.
Yeah, but exactly how this all plays together, I'm not sure at the moment. So I need to read up on that.
Okay.
Other comments?
Just for information, we have 8 more minutes. I don't know how much more remains from your presentation.
Not so much. So I think if it's only my presentation, then we'll make it.
Yes, it's only the presentation, and if we want to discuss if it will affect the chart.
That's right. Okay, so let me speed up the issues so we have time for the chart. Next slide, please. Yes, so now we have opened the lid on CBOR encoding things related to certificates. And then comes a number of other questions, at least 2 other questions. Should we look at CBOR encoding of CRLs, which is fairly straightforward? Should we look at CBOR encoding of OCSP responses? Opinions?
Well, OCSP, definitely. CRLs, I'm not so sure. Who needs that?
Yeah, I'm in a similar boat. We should definitely have some way to convey revocation information, but we can take some time to think about which ones actually make sense in this format.
Good, thank you. Great feedback. Next slide. I don't think we need to spend much time on this, but since this was an issue, and now looking very simply at Carsten, what should be the file extension for these objects, the CBOR certificate and the CBOR encoded variants here? Maybe we should, if you have a good opinion, maybe you could just fill in the issue, make a comment on the issue on this. Do you think it's something worth bringing up here? Or anyone else, of course, who find this interesting.
So I was recently trying to do I'm encoding something in CBOR somewhat internally that sometimes makes it to disk, and I wouldn't mind having a and I previously had a magic number at the beginning of the file when it was bespoke encoded. And so I'm actually thinking about how to do this in a standard way in CBOR. And so actually that certificate, it would be useful to, it would actually be worth thinking about whether we should, the file format actually maybe should it be a CBOR sequence, with the second sequence being the certificate and the first one just being a magic number that can be thrown away when you transfer it across the wire or something like that. But I think that's actually kind of something reasonable, because if it is stored on disk, knowing what thing you need to it goes with and other stuff like that is actually kind of really useful in the end.
Great. For those who are knowledgeable in this and see the and know the practical implications, please provide some answer here, or maybe we should even ping the CBOR working group for thinking about this, unless they're doing it already. Just to wrap up, there is a final point. Final slide is the last slide. Just a reminder. Michael, you kindly volunteered to provide an example. Looking forward to that. Thanks. And now for the charter. There was an interest in looking at CBOR encodings of things related to certificates, namely CSRs, something related to certificates. Was that it? CSRs and something related to certificate. Yes.
Revocation.
So yes, exactly. Sorry, revocation. Something related to revocation. So maybe something like that should be added to the charter if we think that is the right way to go. Should I start drafting something and send to the working group for review? Or does anyone want to provide some input?
So for me, this will be definitely very interesting.
Good.
Okay, so it seems to me that there are people who consider this interesting, and so far there is no one opposing. So yes, Goran, please go ahead and draft some text, and of course people will review it, and then we'll see if it works.
Okay, fine. Karsten also posted a comment on the charter, which I commented on, and it's in the chat. And I could add that at the same time when I'm making a proposal for update of the charter.
Yes, please.
Okay, then we're done with this presentation.
Okay, so then any other business for the 2 minutes that we have still? Well, if not, thank you everyone for your participation, and we'll have a next meeting in around 1 month. So I'll see you there.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.